Thank you very, very much, both of you, Karina and Wadonu. That's super interesting what you presented to us here, and I'm sure that lots of people have questions. I can see Peter has already raised his hand. Maybe what you could do, Karina, I don't know whether you would like to close the presentation that we can see each other.
Exactly, I can do that. I just wanted to say we also put a few questions in the chat, but as I see, you already have questions like that. So no, I put them in the presentation, and I'm going to post them in the chat. Some questions that would be interesting for us, because we tried out many different formats right now, and it's quite time and personnel intensive, and we're trying to scale that approach, and we would love to discuss those questions with you, and mostly you can also feel free to ask questions to our students, because there's many of them in the call as well. So thank you.
Do you want to show your slides first with the questions, maybe, so that everybody sees
I can also just post them in the chat, or say them quickly. It's one is that we would like to know if you think that those approaches would also be valuable for your project, and how. What restrictions you see with participative approaches like that. And then we would like to scale that approach, and would like to discuss with you what challenges you see and what opportunities. And I'm posting that in the chat right now.
Okay, so we have 3 questions on the approaches, whether they're useful, restrictions that we can see, or challenges and opportunities. I would like to invite those that have raised their hand to come up with their questions, and then during the run of the remaining 35 minutes, we can surely discuss that as well. I would like to go, Peter, if that's okay with you, in the order of Tan, and then Peter, and then Diogratius. Tan, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks you both for that. As Hannah said, it's super interesting work. I would like to have a question to the work from Animand in the slide 13. What you presenting, that how he introduced the liquid fertilizers and also introduced the farmers. So my question is come to that, what knowledge he get from for the producing the liquid fertilizers? Because the effective the methods or the fertilizer itself for the different crops, I mean, how he could introducing it to the farmers, because it must be that's a knowledge transfer from the different group or different villages, I don't know, to the new villages. So where is the knowledge of producing liquid fertilizers come from?
Thank you for the question. I think Aninem is not here himself, but I think Madame Minodu is better placed to answer to it. Or one of the other colleagues. Also welcome to our local lead Uzia, and my colleague Rike is also here. So the whole Minodu team is here, I see. Super nice. Madame Minodu, can you answer the question?
Yes, to my knowledge, the students learned this knowledge from himself. He have participated to some training on agriculture workshops. So he got the knowledge on how to produce the liquid fertilizer there, and he decided to share it with the farmers as they faces the problem of land fertilizing. Okay. That's what I know. I don't know if one of the leads have to complete something. Thank you.
No, I mean, it also can be later, because, I mean, that's a general. I would think that if you have a knowledge, what have not been tested, have been applied, you know, it's the same vaccination or whatever you have new, if it's not been tested and proof, and you're already spreading the knowledge, it could be a little bit unsecure if you're already spreading the knowledge, but they, you know, have been not been tested. So that's why, I mean, maybe later, maybe see have more information. I could be happy to hear about it later.
And I think that's also what Aninam is trying to do with the test that he's doing right now, and he's trying to follow up the farmers on the long run to really look at the details on the efficiency.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Tan, for that question. Peter?
And I was going to ask the same question about other the approach is efficient compared to the other fertilizer, but I think Tan has already done that, so I will not go ahead. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thanks, Peter. Okay, we have Dear Gracias as next one.
Yeah, so Tan has also partially asked about what I was going to ask, but the next thing is what made the scientists to choose liquid fertilizer over composting? Hello?
Yes, that
Yeah.
question is probably to be answered again by Wadanu.
Yes, thank you for the question. The student chose to work on liquid fertilizer because there is another project that is working on how to produce compost, so they can do the same thing together at the one time. Then we visit the communities, exchange with them, and try to understand their challenges, and based on it, the students develop the projects to help resolve the challenges they are facing in the sector of agriculture and all the consequences of climate change. Thank you.
Uzia, do you want to add something, or do you have your hand up for a separate question?
No, I just wanted to add something. Thank you.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So yeah, the one thing I can add regarding the choice of the fertilizer and the fact that it had not been really totally tested before going to the community is that we are also trying to make the project sustainable in ways that communities themselves should also try things. Either they learn something from our local network that we set up, they have to be empowered to try new methods, because that's the big issue. There are a lot of knowledge at the university that we have to get back to them. They have to be able to take the risk to try things and to share their findings, to confirm what has been done in the academic field. So that's also that part that we are trying to empower in them to be a little bit adventurous and try new things. Yeah, thanks.
I think that's a very good addition, and that's also replying to Tan's question the best, that we really try to foster frugal innovation, so simple innovations locally, and that only goes by trial and error. And there's also one student working explicitly on that, Abigail. I don't know if you want to add something on that. You're welcome to do that now, as you're in the call as well.
Maybe we can come back to her.
Yeah.
I have a question. Michael, you put something in the chat. Is that just the same question that you raise your hand and you want to just say it, or shall I read your question in the chat? So Michael asked about approaches. You can ask it yourself, okay?
I asked it myself, and it fits very well to some other comments of the questions which have been made. And the question that I've written here is, what do you mean with approaches? Do you mean the 3 innovations that you have presented to us and you propose to replicate them otherwise? Or do you mean with approach the fact that you are experimenting together with farmers, with local communities about selected innovations? These are 2 very different things. First of all, that is a question. And for example, Tan, Peter, and several others also already mentioned that for some innovations, we have to be very skeptical with whether these are real innovations or just ideas which do not work. In our project in Parakou, we have 2 master students who went out and asked farmers about past innovations which had been spread by projects, by research. And many of these innovations, so-called innovations, were abandoned by farmers just after the project left, because they were more adapted to do a favor to the researchers. or let's say also because they wanted to test them. That is a second thing. It's a difference whether you come in as a researcher and you say, we try out some innovations with you and see what the results are, or whether you say, I disseminate technologies, then you say, we have tested them, or you go with the assumption that we have tested them, we know that they are working, do them. So these are very different messages. The ones you do with very few farmers because of course researchers cannot experiment with farmers all over the country, so you do it with a small sample, and then you say, okay, we are almost sure that it works. Then we go out, we disseminate, we work with extension officers, with project and so on. So you seem to do both, and this clarification where you are, what are your really, what are your assumptions, how sure you are about what you are doing or what you are disseminating, or do you experiment? Are you yet on the experimental level? That is my a little bit complex question, which I wanted. Yeah, it's maybe better to ask. Already than in a short sentence. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. That gets way clearer now. And I think we do both, but I think it's very important that we don't talk about innovation. I think that is very important because I think that term is very difficult, especially in the context we're working in. And we're really rather trying to get the students or create a connection between the students and the field, so to say, because the education system is very frontal and there's not many experiments, or many of the students had never done experiments like that before, depending on the discipline they're in. And it's very enriching to create the dialogue locally. It seems so simple. In the end, it's a very simple idea, actually. It's just that connection between the students and their communities of origin. We believe that this is a valuable bridge to translate knowledge locally. And it's very important that we don't only work with scientific knowledge that is out there on the internet, for example, but also with knowledge that is available in the communities. And we want to connect that local traditional knowledge with the scientific knowledge. And there we talk about very different approaches, because as I said, the students define the projects themselves mostly. And of course, we discussed the different approaches, and our main focus was on how can we actually talk with the communities on a respectful level. How can we create a meaningful dialogue with them? How do we sell, or how do we explain what we want to do? And it's very different for every project, but most of them really try out new or other ways of doing research, of like they're trying out together with the community. So it's really participatory research, and the communities are ideally not objects in that research, but they're really participating. And that worked out quite well, but it worked out quite well because we, as the team from Berlin, we very rarely went to the communities, actually only once, and the students did all that work. So it's really them who carry their projects, and I think that is really making the difference, because we're not going there and making any promises. We're just in the background and trying methodological approaches to foster another kind of collaboration and of learning locally. Does that answer your question?
Partially. Yes, I see that you are doing this research, but the wording that you sometimes use sounded like you are spreading knowledge, and that is of course a different thing. I mean,
yeah, then I have to
if you test local knowledge, no, doesn't matter. Of course, if you test local knowledge, for example, for its effectiveness, that is okay. Then you don't call it maybe innovation. You call it a technology or whatever. Or a local, it is more than a knowledge, it is an application of knowledge, because you also need materials, for example. Just for example, the liquid fertilizer, it will very much depend on what you put in the liquid, which kind of plants you put in, and as a green manure, agreed. So I don't know whether it's an innovation, whether it's a local technology or a local knowledge, but what is sure, you try to test it together with communities. But again, then my question is that what you call an approach, what you want us or other projects to take over, or do you want specifically to that not we are not an implementation project, but that they use this liquid fertilizer in their projects? That is the second question then. Huh?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think there is aspects that may come out that may be valuable for other projects, because those 3 that we presented are just 3 examples out of 15 that are all very different and very valuable, I think. But what our main focus is on a meta level is really the approaches that we're testing, on how we're working together with the university, with the students, how we're trying to build local knowledge in, because local knowledge is not simple, it's very complex, and mostly it's not existing in a written format, and we cannot just go there and it's told to us, but it's very difficult to access this knowledge. And that's where the students really come in, because they have another access to the local and traditional knowledge, which we as foreign researchers don't have access to that easily. Okay. Does any of my colleagues want to add anything on that question? Or the students?
So I can see that you have 2 layers, isn't it? You have the overall approach, that the Minodu approach, and then you also have these different technologies that you're working with in different levels.
Exactly.
Yeah. Abram Zakaria, you had your hand up and then you disappeared your hand, but now you've just written something into the chat. Sorry, you've just written it to me. Let me just see. So you were asking about whether it is possible to conduct cost-effectiveness studies on the liquid fertilizer, since most of the resource-poor farmers may not be able to use it if it's expensive. Maybe you can answer, or somebody in the group can answer to that. How expensive is it? Or do you do studies on there on the cost?
Udanu, do you want to answer? Or Uzia?
Yes, so just quickly, what I understood from what Mr. Amanam did is that he looked around the community and found out that with the ingredient they are using to produce the liquid fertilizer, they are all available there, most of them, so they can have access to it. So we didn't like run a cost a study on it to understand exactly how much it cost, but the approach was to use what they have access to as waste, crop waste, and whatever they can have around, and how they can recycle them and take advantage on what they already have to produce it. So that's the approach, and because most of them, they will have to buy if they want to use chemical fertilizer, they have to buy it. But with his liquid fertilizer, they can just use whatever they have as waste around. Yeah, so that's one approach of to figure out the cost and how interesting is it for them. Yeah. And on the long run, of course, we will check if they found it interesting and all those things. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is that answering your question, Zakaria? Yes.
Very, very well answered.
Thank you. Okay, super. Good. I've got Deogracias again.
Yeah,
Thank you for being so patient.
Yes, thank you once again. But what I would like to say is it is always better to try a research first before taking it to the farmer, because to the researcher, once it goes bad, we will still get our salary. But to the farmer who has taken loan credits at exorbitant rates, and when an innovation fails, it has led to some farmers hanging themselves in India because they couldn't pay the debt. It has led to farmers abandoning farms in Ghana because in the era of early cropping, when it was tested in the experimental station, they never considered about the labor requirement of chopping the trees. They made farmers adopted it, and these trees grew. Farmers could not really lobbed them to be lower. These trees grew, they spread their seeds with explosive mechanisms, and within 3 years, farmers couldn't farm on their farms again. And it made farmers not to trust new research ever again. So it is always important, even if it's for sustainability, there are ways within which you work with the farmer, take a bit of the land, a few one, give him the chemical to apply it. And then at the end of the day, if he himself measures with it, you show, okay, the plant is growing taller, the yield is growing bigger. He himself has seen, but to give to the farmer to apply, when it goes bad for the farmer, can cost life. This is real. That is why it's always important to test at a small place within the community. Then everybody sees, because for us researchers, we will always get salary, but the farmer will never recover. This is very important for us to take note of.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think indeed you're raising a very important point, and we're very careful with things like that. So our trials are all very small, or we're rather opening a discussion with the farmers, because they are indeed very frustrated by researchers, by development cooperation, by people who are coming to the villages and promising things and never coming back again. So that's why we're really trying to rather open dialogue on a very small scale, and we're not forcing anyone to change any production patterns or anything. Like it is very on a very small level. But I see that Fernand, you raised your hand. Do you want to add something?
Yes, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to say, I just want to let us know that every research that we made, we don't bring, we never bring something new in our community. Every research that we made and the result that we bring in our communities is not something that has not been tested or something new. It's something that are used in other community. It's tested in other community, but in our community, they don't know it. It's those things that we bring in our communities. Because I heard many persons say that to not bring something, to not use something, some researchers before tested. That's what I want to clear. It's not something new that we bring, but it's something that are tested or are used in other communities that our communities can use but don't use. I don't know if you understand me well, but that's it. It's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernand. So Fernand is one of our students. Thank you for that addition. I think that is very important. And we have many examples of good practices, for example, that are already practiced in the south of Togo, but not in the north yet. And then we're kind of also trying to foster that knowledge exchange. I think that is a very important aspect that Fernand just added. Thank you.
I think there's a lot of knowledge transfer going on. That's what you do.
Exactly, transfer and then adaptation, because if you cannot just go to a village and say, hey, they're doing this and that practice in the south of the country, just do that as well. But like you need to open a dialogue, do small trials, and try to share the knowledge in a different way so that it's really landing in the community. And that's what we're mostly working with, or the students are mostly working with, because in the end it's really their work.
Since I don't see any hands immediately, maybe that gives me a chance to also ask a couple of questions. Firstly, I was not exactly clear how the students are, well, at what stage of their studies they are. Is it like a BSc or an MSc level? And how the projects that they do within the Minodu project fit into their curriculum. Is it like a part of their thesis work, or, you know, is it something extra that they're doing? So maybe you can explain a little bit on that one. And then maybe second part of that same question is, you mentioned that the students went out to their communities to collect some challenges that they would, you know, that the villagers would like them to work on. Likewise, the question is, was that followed maybe the selection of specific challenges with some kind of literature research or some other kind of research to see the basis of that, you know, that the studies that they're doing? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's a very good question. And we actually started out with a very diverse group of students because we also wanted to try to really have a diverse crowd so that they can also learn from each other. So in this group of students, we have most of them are in agriculture in some way, but there's also someone who's, for example, in law. There's also someone in economics. So it's very diverse, and some of them are doing their already have their bachelor's thesis, some are working on it, and some are on a master's level. And we also had PhD students, so very diverse and many different levels. It had some advantages, but it also had some challenges. And yeah, now we're kind of evaluating how that went and what we might maybe also adapt in the future. And some of them did their research projects that they are completing now. So their last individual research projects on their thesis topics. So it was then integrated with their thesis work. And that worked very, very well for some cases and really enriched the work on their respective theses. For others, it was a bit more complicated. So very diverse conclusion here as well. And in general, it's yeah, no, I don't really have a final conclusion, I think, but very, very different profiles, and then also very valuable exchange, I think, when the students gave each other feedback on their different projects, because they had completely different angles sometimes. And if you want to add anything from the student side, don't hesitate. There's also Michael.
Okay, thanks. So no immediate addition from the students, but that's quite interesting, because I didn't know that they were at so different levels, actually. If you say from before the BSc degree to PhD students, that makes a difference. And I would imagine that would also make a difference to the, let me call it, scientific quality of the work that they're doing, because, you know, for some of the, I mean, we only saw 3 examples, right? 2 of which were kind of more field research type activities, where you would expect to work on more or less a randomized, you know, design with having multiple treatment levels, etc., etc. So the question, of course, is how rigorous is this kind of work? How much are the farmers also involved in doing that research? You know, is it just research the students then do, going back from the farmers and saying, well, they would like me to work on this? Or are the farmers also involved in developing some of the treatments, whether it's like, I don't know exactly what you're doing, but maybe if it's like different levels of phytochemicals to treat pests, or, you know, different crops or something like that. So can you maybe elaborate a bit on, you know, how much are the farmers also involved in that, and how scientifically rigorous are some of these studies?
Yeah, that's also a very good question, because it's very different indeed. And we also had a few students who started out their studies during the pandemic and who were missing many classes and had never really worked in a scientific way. So of course that was a bit challenging, but actually they catched up quite quickly, and they, like, some of them really have, I think, one of the most interesting results in the end. So it's also, it was a very good peer learning setting, I think, you know, that students really learn from each other. And yeah, that was definitely an advantage of that setting. And the results are just like really very, very different. And what they all we're obliged to do is going to the communities on a regular basis. And I think they all did very well. Like, we have very good reports from the community exchanges and super nice documentation. And some of them also took videos or audio. So it's a very nice and rich documentation of that. And I think the exchange with the communities was really ongoing and very high level. And now the end product of the individual research projects is transformed into an audio format that is transferred to the communities. And that is mandatory, and it's provided in one of the local languages, so that it's really accessible to everyone in those communities. And the task of the students was to make that audio file as interesting as possible. So they had a really good coach in the last weeks who helped them build a narrative around their research results that would really talk to the local community. So it would be a really interesting audio piece that would be shared in the communities to also give back, because that was something that we really started out with. The goal was to start that exchange, but always give something back, because we don't want to be the next research team that is just going, asking questions, taking data, and then never coming back. So this is now the happening in the next months, that we give those audios back, and then and then we're going to move on with the next phase.
No, that's super. I think that's oftentimes lacking, is treating your research partners in the field with the respect of giving them some information back. Okay, Michael, you have your hand, but I've just got something in the chat which refers to some of the previous discussions. So let me just read that one. Giselle has commented, to add what Kakasina has just said, during our visits to discuss with the producers, there are some, sorry, I can't read because something happened here.
Who attested to having heard of these.
Can you read that? I have something.
Just something, but just do not know the production techniques of these liquid fertilizers, for example. And Giselle, thank you so much for adding that. Giselle is really one of our experts in that field. She's doing trials in the laboratory with different fertilizers. Giselle, I don't know if you can talk yourself. Maybe your connection is too weak. And as she said, there's many, farmers who buy, for example, a fertilizer, but that can also be homemade somehow. And then the students were looking into details on how to lower costs for farmers, for example, for producing fertilizers locally, or using waste, or using different approaches.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, while waiting for Giselle, whether she can reply, I have another question, a little bit linked to what we have discussed. Where are the professors in all this discussions? Because if in a German university you have such a program, you would have to find a professor who says, okay, I'm interested in that. Master student, PhD student at that level, you discuss this research protocol with him. You would also say, okay, have a literature review, what has already been done with it. So let's say in a typical agricultural faculty, you have certain standards for the different things. If you test pesticides, this phytopathology, if you test an app that is maybe economics or social sciences, so etc. But I haven't heard anything about the role of the professor. How do you convince them? How do you assure that they are on board, that they accept the methodologies that you propose here? Because, for example, what we have seen is definitely not up to standards of typical pest science research, for example. I don't want to be too critical, but agricultural science has some established, let's say, sets of methodologies, and usually that is where professors come in and assure certain quality of research. Whether you do it with farmers or not, that is another question. But there are definitely methodologies which you can do with farmers, but still there are some standards like how many repetitions do you need, etc.
Yeah, thank you. We have one of the professors here. Madame Minodu, do you want to answer that question?
Sorry, I just hear the question. Can you please repeat, please?
My question was, how were professors from your university involved in this testing and identification of local technologies or traditional technologies, establishing the research protocols, accepting or working on methodologies with the students? I was just interested to hear. We hear a lot about the students, but not about the professors, which in an academic context are always the ones who finally have to accept the different trials and studies. And here what I understand is that you are working here with a lot of different approaches, so technologies, from testing or assessing the use of applications which have been introduced by somebody to local pest diseases, maybe, I don't know what else is there. Fertilizer is then plant nutrition, for example. So how many of the professors are there, how they are involved in identifying the issues? I hope they have understood now. If not, I could also repeat it in French.
Yes, now I understood what the question is about. And now I can say that in Togo, especially in Kara, there are 2 professors with me, a doctor. So we are three persons in the team of Minodu, and how we involve in the projects. As the professors are the supervisors of the students, so they have idea mainly in the sector of agriculture. The professors working in the Minodu projects are specialists of the agricultural domain, so they know the challenges of the farmers, they know the consequences, the problems of climate change, and how they can do to adapt to these consequences. So what they do is to help the students in their projects, how to find now the challenges. The challenges are find locally by discussing with the communities, and the next step, the professors guide them in writing their projects, in implementing the project or the tests on farms, and they also make collaboration with other universities. I think Karina can more talk about it. And then they have collaboration with other universities out of Togo, and these universities contribute in elaborating workshops to work with these students and show them how they can use technology in the agricultural sector. And that is what brings to the prototype of the network exchange that some are going to develop and escape the issue of internet, for example. Lastly, we had by the collaboration of, I don't know, is it America or where? There's a town in, I don't remember, Karina will find, but tele-agriculture. We had a workshop on tele-agriculture lastly in Kara, and that consists in showing to the students how we can use internet and tele-agriculture to improve the activities in the communities. So that is how the professors or the teachers are involved in the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Uzia, do you want to add something here? I'm just looking at the time. So do you want to add something?
Yeah, just quickly to add that there are
think?
some also that some students that were already working on doctoral projects who were being followed by a professor that was not necessarily part of our team, but who like gave his they're already working on something that our both Professor Pilo and Bokubana went through and validated few steps, and that student got the authorization from her professor supervisor to, you know, to share or to disseminate what they found already. And really the idea is to through those experiments find ways that we can communicate research, the best approaches, and what we can leverage on to develop our methodology of knowledge transfer. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, time is up. Karina and team, we did not really make it to discuss specifically the 3 questions that you posed, but I think that the discussion was very lively. I have taken from it that we that there is a lot of need to communicate, maybe also a bit more on the actual experimentation that was done with the farmers and for the farmers. By the students, and that your approach has sort of several facets. It's got the actual experimentation, it's got the communication. I think that's very important also to your project, and the means of communication by using this small community network that you're establishing. What I like very much is that the students get trained in how to prepare podcasts and audios. I think that's a super soft skill that they also learn in the run of being part of this project. And I've taken away that this is really something that we'll continue hearing of and that we'll continue discussing also. And it certainly, I was impressed by the number of participants and also by the lively discussion today. If you want to say some last words, Karina or Udanu, please.
Okay, then I will just jump in. Thank you so much as well from our side. And yeah, just to the last question, the professors are very, very important in our project. They're really steering all the work with the students. And normally they would have been here today, but they had some last minute things coming up and could not join us in the end, but they are very crucial. And the communication with the farmers and the communities is really at the heart of our project. And I think indeed learning from them and feeding in the local and traditional knowledge and trying to communicate differently with each other is really what the project is all about, and what what is very interesting and very valuable, because we get very nice feedback also from the communities directly. But yeah, there's many things still to be improved and to work on, and thank you all for discussing that so lively and for being part of this discussion.